first lesson for this chapter, we will be discussing about the different energy resources. So the big idea is that Earth has natural resources such as energy, water, and soil that are harnessed for sustainability. And here are the learning competencies that hopefully at the end of this lesson or chapter, you will be able to accomplish. Okay, so first of all, energy resources may be categorized as renewable or non-renewable. So renewable energy or renewable sources or resources are sources of energy that can be replenished or renewed over time. On the other hand, non-renewable resources are resources that do not renew themselves at a sufficient rate within a human time frame. Okay, so renewable energy resources. The Republic Act of 9513, or also known as the Renewable Act of 2008, governs the development, the utilization, and commercialization of energy resources in the Philippines. The renewable resources include biomass, solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, ocean, as well as the hybrid systems or a combination of each. Okay, so first of all, we have hydro energy. So hydroelectric power plants utilizes the kinetic energy of falling or running water to turn a turbine generator and generate electricity. The output energy from falling water depends on the available flow and the height from which the water flows. Okay, so a dam has a reservoir where a large volume of water is stored. With the aid of gravity, the potential energy of the water is transformed into mechanical energy when when it falls through a penstock. So what happens is that the moving water strikes the rotary blades of the turbine, which turns the shaft into the electric generator. So the motor or the electric generator is the motor that produces electricity. Then the current passes through a transformer to increase the voltage and carried through power transmission cables. Okay, so hydroelectric power plant is non-polluting, so this is one of the pros of a hydro power plant. However, it has environmental impact because of its requirements, which is a dam and a reservoir. And the presence of a dam and a reservoir and the hydropower's installation obstructs fish migration, and this can affect fish population. The dam can alter natural water systems, which affect nearby wildlife and agricultural lands. It can also change the landscapes and may even cause displacement of human populations. Like the very controversial Kaliwa Dam, I hope you are familiar with this ongoing project by the government. So this Kaliwa Dam is actually situated or is planned to be built in the Sierra Madre, which we all know for a fact is one of our main protector when it comes to typhoons. And another issue about this is that the fund that will be used for the building of this Kaliwa Dam will be coming from the Chinese government, which is history-wise, they are very known to have or to put in very high interest for the loans that they provide. Okay, so next we have ocean power. So ocean water has a vast potential to generate energy by using other sources of power. The oceans can be tapped to produce electricity through the power or energy provided by waves, by tides, and the temperature fluctuations of the oceans. So we have to recall how tides are formed. I hope you remember that there are always two high tides and low tides in a day. A large volume of water flows in and out of the coast along bays and estuaries twice a day. If the difference in water heights is large enough, the kinetic energy in the flowing water can be used to turn turbines to produce electricity. So tidal power has some advantages over other sources. The source of power is free, therefore the operating costs are low. It is also non-polluting and requires little land space. However, there are limited suitable sites for constructing a tidal power plant. Construction costs are high, and the dam and the plant could be vulnerable to storms. The metal parts of the plant are easily corroded by salt water. Since the plant disrupts the normal flow of tides, aquatic life may be disturbed. There are only a few places in the world where conditions are suited to generate electricity from tidal power. So an example for that, so by the way, this is how tidal power plant works. So the tidal electricity generation works as the tide comes in and again when it goes out. So what happens is that because of the coming in and out of the tides, the turbines are driven by the power of the sea in both directions. Okay, so these are a few examples of the tidal power plants in the world. So the first picture here that you see on the lower right corner is the Reims tidal power station, which we can see in France. It is built in 1966. So the other one that you can see in the upper left is the Kislaya Guba tidal power station, which is found in Russia, and it was built in 1968. So there you go. In other locations or countries also have their own tidal power plant, like China, Canada, and we have two in South Korea. Okay, so the kinetic energy of ocean waves can also be transformed into electricity. There are many advantages of using wave energy. Okay, so it is free, first of all. It is environment friendly. It is widely available. It is easily predictable. It brings no damage to land, and there are a variety of ways to harness it. There are some drawbacks, however. For example, it is suitable only to certain locations. It creates hazards to marine ecosystem, and wave generators may be unpleasant visuals to those who live near the coastal area. Okay, so this is how wave or power is generated through wave power generation. So the rising and the falling of waves causes the wind turbine to produce electricity. The next one is the use of an ocean thermal energy conversion, or known as OTEC. So this is another way of producing energy using ocean water. It uses the temperature difference between surface water, which is usually around 25 degrees Celsius, and deep ocean water, which is usually around 5 degrees Celsius. So the water or the surface temperature vaporizes a low boiling point fluid like ammonia. The vapor expands and spins a turbine. The vapor is then condensed by deep ocean water into liquid so that it can be reused. So this is how it works. Okay, so OTEC has the following advantages. It is available day and night and all year round, and it offers synergistic products like fresh water, nutrient-rich cold water for enhanced fish farming, and chilled water for cooling greenhouses. The cold water can be used for air conditioning system and for cold storage facilities. OTEC is not without disadvantages. First, it is not feasible in all regions. It is only viable in equatorial regions or areas. The problem lies in its cost. An OTEC system is expensive to operate and maintain. China is one of the countries that has plans to build OTEC power plants in their southern coast. Okay, next we have geothermal energy. So from the previous lesson that we had, you learned that the Earth's internal heat comes from radioactive decay of isotopes such as potassium-40, uranium-238, uranium-235, and thorium-232. So from the residue heat of planetary accretion and other sources. It has been found out that there is a direct relationship between the rates of increase in temperature with respect to the increase in depth of the Earth's interior. So this is referred to as the geothermal gradient. Okay, so the heat from the Earth's interior may be used as energy source known as geothermal energy. And geothermal power plants are used to harness heat energy released from underground steam and hot springs to spin turbines which generate electricity. There are different types of power stations. We have dry steam, we also have flash steam, and we also have binary steam. Okay, first of all, we have dry steam. So dry steam power plants have the most simple and oldest designs. A dry steam power plant directly uses geothermal steam. So as you can see here in the picture, the steam goes directly to the turbine that drives the generator, which produces electricity. And the steam is cooled in the condenser, turns into cool water, and is then returned to the reservoir. So that's how it works. Next, we have flash steam. So flash steam power plants are the most common type used today. And what happens or how it works is that the hot water is pumped under great pressure to the surface. And when it reaches the surface, the pressure is reduced, causing the water to boil rapidly or flash into vapor. The vapor in the flash tank drives the steam turbine. After passing through the turbine, the steam is cooled in the condenser. So the cooled water is returned to the reservoir and heated by geothermal rocks. Okay, next we have the binary steam or the binary cycle power plants. So these are used if the water that reaches the surface is not hot enough to produce steam. So the hot geothermal water alongside a secondary fluid with a much lower boiling point, such as isopentane, is passed through a heat exchanger. So the heat from the hot water causes the secondary fluid to flash vapor, and the vapor drives the turbine that produces electricity. So isopentane condenses back and is reused again. So as you can see in the picture, that's how a binary system works. Okay, so because of geographic location, the Philippines ranks second only to the United States in terms of geothermal energy production. So 10 of the biggest geothermal plants in the world, so out of the 10 biggest geothermal power plants in the world, 3 are actually found in the Philippines. So these are the Tiwi Geothermal Complex in Albay, the Macban Geothermal Complex in Laguna, and the Malitbog Geothermal in Ormoc City. Okay, so geothermal plants have minimal land and freshwater requirements. So it has nearly zero air emission because it does not involve combustion. And the emission from cooling towers is composed of water vapor and not of smoke. So there are some environmental concerns regarding geothermal power. The fluids drawn from deep within Earth may carry toxic materials such as hydrogen sulfide, methane, ammonia, and trace amounts of mercury, arsenic, boron, and antimony. These materials may cause environmental damage, and the management of geothermal waste is governed by existing environmental laws such as RA 9275, which is the Clean Water Act, RA 8749 or the Clean Air Act, and RA 9003 or the Solid Waste Management Act. Next, we have solar energy. So we know this already. The sun is considered the largest source of energy. The sunlight that reaches Earth consists nearly 50% visible light, 45% infrared radiation, and 5% ultraviolet radiation and other forms of electromagnetic radiation. If the sun's energy is properly harnessed, it can supply all future needs. Okay, so solar energy can be converted into electricity by solar cells, or what we also call as photovoltaic cells. The cells are made up of semiconductor materials, usually this is silicon, and when sunlight strikes the cell, it ejects electrons from the atoms. As the electrons flow through the cell, electricity is generated. So the power generated by a single photovoltaic cell is about 2 watts. By connecting a large number of individual cells in solar array panels, several thousand watts of electric power can be generated. So another way to harness solar energy is through the use of concentrated solar power or solar thermal system. So this system works by using the sun's energy as heat source. The heat is used to boil water to drive the steam turbine that generates electricity. So, in the Philippines, solar energy is being harnessed to generate electricity. Some major solar power plants that utilize photovoltaic cells are found in Cavite, Cagayan de Oro, Batangas, and Bulacan. Okay, so solar energy has several advantages over other renewable sources of energy. First, and most important, it is limitless and free. Solar energy can be tapped even in remote locations that have no access to power cables. Harnessing solar energy is noise-free. Solar cells require no other mechanical components other than the solar panels themselves. Finally, solar panels require little maintenance and reliable immediately after installation. Solar energy has drawbacks which may discourage its mainstream use. Harnessing solar energy may be inconsistent and unreliable at night and during rainy or wet season. In terms of cost, solar RE panels may be costly. The installation of solar panels is slightly restricted to spacious areas. And lastly, environmental pollutants such as cadmium and lead are used in making photovoltaic cells. Next, we have wind energy. So, wind energy is secondary form of solar energy. Okay, so air is set in motion by the pressure gradient force or PGF, which is the flow from high pressure to low pressure. The pressure differences in the atmosphere are due to the warming and cooling of air. So when cool dense air is placed next to warm less dense air, the pressure between the two air masses results in wind. Okay, so the wind energy is converted into power using a rotor. The actual performance efficiency of a wind machine varies from 10 to 50% depending on the aerodynamics of the rotor. Wind energy conversion technologies are based on size and application, and wind-driven power plants could be considered as one of the following. So first, it can be a grid-connected wind turbine or a WTG. It have designs that may be three-bladed, stall or pitch regulated, or horizontal axis machines operating at near fixed rotational speed. The action of the wind rotates the blades, which drives the generator that produces the electricity. So this is usually the one that we're most familiar with because we have, like, if I'm not mistaken, two here in the Philippines, one in Ilocos and one in Pililla, Rizal. The second one is the wind hybrid systems. So it uses the other energy sources such as photovoltaic cells, as you can see in the picture, to store power in batteries. So they are used in small remote grids for special applications such as water pumping or battery charging. Next, we have wind pumps. So wind pumps transform the kinetic energy of the wind to cause the vertical action of the piston to suck water upwards. So the windmill replaces human power in a hand-operated water pump. So usually we see this in other countries wherein they utilize wind energy to also pump water. So the Wind Energy Resources Atlas of the Philippines identified potential sites for wind energy generation in the country. So some of the existing major wind power sites in the Philippines include the Bangi Wind Farm, like what I said, the one in Ilocos. We also have the another one in Ilocos is the Burgos Wind Farm. They also have the Caparispisan Wind Farm, and in Rizal, we have the Pinilla Wind Farm. We also have one in Guimaras, it's the Tarek. And in Aklan, we have the Nabas Wind Farm. So, according to the government, there are other potential sites for building wind farms, which can be placed in Cuyo Islands in Palawan, can also be placed in Basco, Catanduanes, Tagaytay City, and Masbate. Okay, so There are several advantages of wind energy over other sources. There is an unlimited supply of wind, and it is readily available to anyone who wishes to harness it, including places that are too remote for electrical cable use. Wind turbines also do not produce greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane. Lastly, wind farms require low maintenance and the running cost is cheap. New technologies have paved way for more durable and efficient wind turbines. Building wind farms is not without its disadvantages. Harnessing the wind for energy requires specific wind speeds that vary on which type of turbines are used. Building up a wind farm involves high investment. Wind turbines are made, transported to a site, and built on strong foundations that require heavy construction. Wind farms are also known to affect bird populations due to deaths resulting from collision with turbine blades. Okay, now we move on to non-renewable energy. So like what I said earlier, non-renewable energy resources are resources that do not renew themselves within the human time frame. The best example for non-renewable resources are the fossil fuels such as coal, petroleum, and natural gas. The fossil fuels or these fossil fuels are formed from the remains of plants and animals that have lived millions of years ago. First of all, we have coal. So coal is a sedimentary rock made up of solid organic material. So it is formed when or from the accumulation of plant remains. What happens is that when plants die, organisms consume some of the plant litter, and chemical reaction aided by oxygen and water decomposes the remainder. As plants grow and die, newly fallen vegetation buries older plants' remains, preventing atmospheric oxygen to complete the decomposition of organic matter. With subsequent burial, the organic litter is compacted and then transformed into peat. With further burial and additional heat and pressure, peat becomes lignite, then becomes bituminous coal, and finally turns into anthracite. So coal may be classified into different types depending on their criteria. So it can be, like what I said, it can be peat, lignite, bituminous, or anthracite. So coal is the most sought after energy source due to its availability, and it is relatively inexpensive. The Philippines is one of the world's minor coal producers. According to the Department of Energy, the Philippines in situ coal reserve could be up to 470 million metric tons, with a potential total of 2.39 billion metric tons. The Philippines' coal deposits are scattered all over the country, with the largest deposit found in Semirana Island in Antique. Coal mines are also located in Cebu, Zamboanga, Sibugay, Albay, Surigao, and Negros Province. Okay, so coal energy, like the Philippines has a number of coal-fired power plants providing more than 40% of the Philippines' electricity requirement. And the question is, how does coal-fired power plant produce electricity? So these are the three stages. First, coal is burnt in the boiler furnace. So the resulting combustion produces heat. Second, the heat boils the water in the boiler to produce high-pressure steam. The high-pressure steam causes the rotation of the turbine. The steam condenses and is pumped back to the boiler. And then finally, the turbine rotates the generator to make alternating current electricity or AC electricity. And this is how it works. Okay, so coal contributes to the degradation of the quality of the atmosphere. Combustion or during combustion, pollutants such as sulfur oxide, nitrogen oxide, carbon dioxide, and ash are emitted. Carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming. Sulfur oxides or nitrogen oxides contribute to the formation of smog and acid rain that affect the environment. And the next we have natural gas. So natural gas is a mixture of naturally occurring light hydrocarbons composed mostly of methane. The main products of the combustion of natural gas are carbon dioxide and water. This is also considered to be the cleanest of all the fossil fuels. So, natural gas forms from the remains of ancient microorganisms as well as plant and animal matter. And under the conditions of high heat and pressure, organic matter undergoes chemical transportation or transformation that creates methane as a byproduct. Natural gas is usually trapped in rock formation, and in order to get the natural gas out of the ground, experts will drill straight down to where the natural gas is thought to be deposited. The process of drilling is called hydraulic fracturing or fracking. It involves a procedure that uses high pressured water or split apart underground rocks in order to release the natural gas trapped within rock layers. Okay, so actually here in the Philippines, we have the Ilihan power plant as shown in the picture. This is situated in Batangas City. So this is the largest power plant that uses natural gas sourced from the Camago Malampaya gas field in Palawan. So the natural gas that is extracted from Malampaya is processed, then piped to a refinery in Batangas City. It is then brought to three power plants, and one of which is Ilihan. This undertaking was dubbed the Malampaya Deepwater Gas to Power Project. The largest natural gas reserve is concentrated in the Malampaya offshore field in Palawan. So, natural gas is used for heating and cooking. It can be burned to generate electricity. The liquid form of natural gas is called liquefied natural gas or LNG. It takes up less space than its gaseous form and can be easily stored and used for various purposes. So, although it is considered a cleaner fossil fuel than oil or coal, the extraction of natural gas can still cause environmental problems. For example, fracturing rocks can induce small earthquakes. The high pressure water and chemical used to split the rock underground can leak to other sources of water, contaminating these sources. So next we have petroleum. So the word petroleum comes from the Latin words petra and oleum, which means rock and oil respectively. And scientists believe that tiny diatoms are a source of oil. So when they die and they are buried under conditions of mild temperature and pressure, they will undergo chemical reaction and form a waxy material called kerogen and a black tar-like substance called bitumen. So bitumen comprises the heaviest component of petroleum, and kerogen undergoes further chemical transformation. Um, as temperature and pressure increases, kerogen undergoes thermal degradation. The resulting product is dependent on some conditions. Higher temperature and pressure lead to complete cracking of the kerogen, forming lighter and smaller hydrocarbons. Extremely hot temperature favors the formation of natural gas. However, cold temperature causes the plankton to remain trapped. Kerogen formation of an oil reservoir requires three conditions. So first, a source rock rich in organic material buried to an appropriate depth, a porous and permeable reservoir rock to accumulate oil, and finally, cap rock, or we call this a seal, to prevent the oil from escaping to the surface. So according to the Department of Energy, huge deposits of oil and natural gas have been identified in three areas in Mindanao. These are Agusan Davao Basin, Cotabato Basin, and the areas straddling Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi. Other deep sea oil deposits have been discovered in Malampaya. The Malampaya oil rim is deemed to hold the largest oil reserve in the country. But before oil can be used, it has to be refined. Okay, so in order to separate and purify the different components, so each component has different properties which serve as basis for their purposes. So as you can see here, these are the basic refining concepts. So which also shows you the final products for each refining stage. So in a refinery, components are separated using fractional distillation. The crude oil passes through a fractionating column where the components with low boiling points move to the top of the column, while the heavier components with high boiling points are collected at the bottom. Some of the heavier components that are difficult to separate may undergo vacuum distillation. The heaviest components are cracked to transform them into lighter hydrocarbon. So, cracking is the process of breaking carbon to carbon bonds in order to change heavier hydrocarbons into lighter ones. So all products undergo further refinement, and the refinery products are grouped into three classes. It can be light, middle, and heavy distillate. First of all, light distillates include liquefied petroleum gas, naphtha, and gasoline. So the molecular composition ranges from pentane to octane. Middle distillates, on the other hand, include kerosene and diesel. The molecular composition ranges from nonane to hexadecane. And then finally, we have the heavy distillates, including the fuel oil, lubricating oil, waxes, and tar. So the molecular composition is heavier than hexadecane. Hydrocarbons lighter than pentane are considered natural gas or natural gas liquid. Some crude oil products become readily available for use. Some are generated as dependable source of electricity. Since some oil reserves are found underneath ocean floors, drilling and extraction could disrupt marine and coastal environment. Also, burning of oil products produce pollutants that affect the environment. Then finally, we have the environmental laws on renewable energy. So first we have RA 9513. So take note, human activities such as utilization of energy from different sources, they all have environmental impact. And the government, consistent with its policy of protecting its people and environment, has enacted these following laws. So again, we have the Renewable Energy Act of 2008, which promotes the development, utilization, and commercialization of renewable energy resources to achieve self-reliance and effectively prevent and reduce harmful emissions in order to have a balance of economic growth and development with ecologically friendly environment. Next, we have the RA 8749, or the Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999. So this is based on the principle of the right of the people to a balanced and healthy ecology. It focuses primarily on pollution prevention rather than control, and it provides for a comprehensive management program for air pollution.